Hello YouTube, Space Cowboy here. In this video, I'm going to talk more about variables, and in this case, global variables. Variables that are created outside of the function. So here I'm creating a function, my own custom function, named myfunc. And there's a variable outside of that function, which is x. So global variables can be used everywhere. So that variable x can even be used inside of that function. However, when you create a variable inside of a function, it's sort of local to that function. And we're going to see that. So global variables can be used by everyone, both inside and outside of the function. So let's create a variable outside of the function and then use it inside of the function. That's what this first example is. Now, let's talk about functions. We've already used the print function, right? Which is built into Python. That comes along with the programming language. The people who developed the Python language created that function. But sometimes you want to create your own custom function, right? Like if you're making a game, sometimes you want to create a function for jumping so that each time they press a certain key, the character jumps, right? Well, that's not built into Python. You got to create that yourself, that jump function. So we're going to create our very first function here, and we're going to use a global variable in it. All right, so let's talk about this function, myfunc. All right, so to create your own custom function, a user-defined function, you need the def keyword, DEF, right there. It's blue. So I defined a function named myfunc. All right, and then it has a set of parentheses, and that set of parentheses is for parameters, because sometimes functions take input, and we'll see that more as I talk about functions later. But I like to show things multiple times. Like I'll introduce you to things early, doesn't matter. It helps when you see things multiple times. All right, so we've got a global variable here, which gets assigned a string. Sorry, awesome. So we have a variable named x, which gets assigned awesome, a string. And let's see what our function does. I defined my function, open close parentheses, very important. Oh, also, you really need a colon right there after your function. See that? That colon, super important. And what this function does is it prints out Python is concatenate x. Okay, cool. So how do you call your function or use your function? You just put the name of it, right? So let's talk about this just real quick. There's two steps to creating a function. You have to define the function and you have to call the function. So lines 12 and 13 are me creating a function that does something, right? Line 15, myfunc, is that's calling the function or telling it to do the thing. You could imagine a function as being let's see, dog shake. Let's say I have a function called dog shake, right? And inside of that function would be like the dog has to sit, the dog has to raise its paw, dog has to wait for the person to shake its paw, and then the dog has to get a treat, right? That would be the lines of code that are inside of that dog shake function. Well then, how do you call the function? You would put the name of that function, dog shake. Just so, this is, I think, a really good example, or a really good, I'm not thinking of the word, way to remember what a function is and how to use it. The first thing is you teach the program how to do something, and then got a spam text from Facebook. All right, fun. Anyways, teach the program how to do something by defining a function with lines of code in it, and then you tell the program to do that thing by just putting the name of the function. Cool. All right, so that's a global variable. I ended up talking a lot about functions, but The important thing is this global variable, since it's outside of the function, it can be used anywhere. All right, if you create a variable with the same name inside a function, this variable will be a local variable and it can only be used inside that function. Global variable with the same name will remain as it was, global, and with the original value. That's interesting. So here, well, let's run it because I didn't show you. The first thing that should print out is Python is awesome, and it did. But let's see what this one does. We've got a local variable. There's a variable inside of the function. It can only be used by that function. So what does it do? X gets assigned awesome, but we define myfunc, which has a local variable inside of the function. X gets assigned fantastic. Now those two variables have the same name, x, lowercase x. And look what it does when we call that function. Does it print out awesome or fantastic? Prints out fantastic. Okay, and then notice that afterwards, after calling the function, it printed out Python is fantastic. It did this stuff. But then I printed out Python is lowercase x. And x, the variable stored, was not changed to fantastic. That global variable, which is stored as awesome, is right here, was not changed by calling this function. So hopefully that makes sense because we print out Python is awesome right after Python is fantastic. All right, cool. How long is this program? Okay, not too much longer. We're about halfway through. Normally, when you create a variable inside of the function, the variable is local and can only be used within that function. If you want a variable inside of a function to be global, used anywhere else in the program, you can use the global keyword. Keywords, by the way, are, at least in my IDE, my programming environment, they are blue. So you can see these keywords. Yellow will be functions. Okay, so that's why myfunc and print are functions. They're yellow. So check this out. This works a little bit differently. I define myfunc. I have a global variable that gets assigned fantastic. And check it out. The fourth thing that gets printed out. Actually, I'm going to change this word so you see that it works a little bit differently when you use a global variable inside of a function. I'm going to say cool. And the fourth print statement, so that's where we're at. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth one prints out Python is cool because that variable is now global, can be used inside or outside of the program. Anywhere in the program, we can use it. What happens if we don't have this line? I'm going to turn it off with a comment. Boom. Run. Actually, I'm going to clear the console. Interesting. You see? It says awesome now. So now it's having trouble accessing that variable because it's not global. This X right here is going to be awesome. That's why we need this variable to be global, used anywhere in the program. And let's see, run it one more time. We should get the fourth one being cool. Yep. All right. Also, you want to use the global keyword if you want to change a global variable inside of a function. To change the value of a global variable inside of a function, refer to the variable by using the global keyword. So this is my last example for you. We've got X gets assigned awesome. Okay, so X was cool because we changed it on this one. So I'm changing it back, assigning it to awesome again. And then I've got my function, global X gets assigned fantastic. And I run my func. I call, so I define the program, define the function, then call the function. And let's see what it does. Python is fantastic. Sweet. So this, because I have a variable X, which is global, it actually reassigns that variable that currently, you know, at first it's at awesome, it reassigns to fantastic. Prints it out. All right. Whew, we're going to see this a lot, and you're going to have to kind of be familiar with global variables. You might get errors, and just be aware that, hey, oh, that variable, it's inside of the function, so it's having trouble, or this part of my code is having trouble accessing it. Maybe I need to make that a global variable. Okay, so when you see that sort of error, those sort of error messages in your program, just keep in mind that might be what you need to do is make a variable global. All right, that's all I got for this video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. I really appreciate it, especially if you want to ring the bell so you get notifications. I'm kind of planning on posting videos Monday through Friday. We'll see how long I can keep that up though. But anyways, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.